Hey all, it's Joe at Reds. I'm out for just a couple hours of fishing today, and I'm testing a rod, and the rod is somewhat important, but more it's going to be about strategy and how you as a do-it-yourself angler can be more versatile. Before I even mention gear, this type of fishing I'm going to do today, I'm going to fish for maybe 2 hours. I hope to catch a couple of fish, but more importantly, I want to take you through what I would do as a do-it-yourself wade fisherman out there in the grind, fishing midday, which we're often doing. We can't always be out at dawn, we can't always be out at dusk, and it's going to require a variety of strategies. And this discussion today in this type of rod is definitely not for the person who's doing going to Montana, excuse me, going to Montana on guided fishing a week a year. Maybe you're coming out and fishing on this river, once a month, with a guide. It's not for that. You don't need this gear for that type of fishing. What I'm going to talk about today is going to be crossover rods, and this rod is made by Hardy. As you can see, it's brand new. I'm just getting it out of the package here, and the reason I'm testing this today is I've been hearing just amazing reviews about this rod. It's their Hardly Ultralite in the 499, and what is different about this rod versus other rods is this is intentionally built as a crossover rod. And I'll show some close-ups of the rod and all that kind of stuff, but I want you paying more attention to kind of what we're talking about today. And it's got little ferrule plugs, which are great. I'll just throw those in the bottom of the tube. And I'm going to put this rod together here. And we'll talk about crossover rods. So I've been doing this for years, but I've been doing it specifically with nice alignment dots there. I've actually only cast this model of rod once, and then I started hearing a lot of feedback on this rod from very serious wade fishermen. So I've been doing this for years, and what I've been doing is I've been trying to fit kind of a square peg in a round hole. And what I mean by that is I've been taking my Euro nymphing rods, and I've been certainly Euro nymphing on them, but then I've been trying to run crayfish on them and sculpin on them and big stoneflies and streamer fish with them. I've even spay fished with them, single hand spay style. And so I've been doing all these different things with these rods, and the rods weren't really built for that. And so those light line Euro nymphing rods are really built for real delicate and surgical touch and go fishing with really small nymphs. And so you start to throw streamers on them, you start to throw a little indicator on them, a dry fly, that kind of stuff. They don't always perform best. But a rod like this is going to allow me to do all these different tactics, and I'm probably going to spend more time rigging and teaching today than actually catching fish, because I want to get through all these techniques. But I'm going to dry fly with this rod, I'm going to dry dropper with this rod, I'm going to indicator fish with this rod, and then I will go and I will throw straight mono for streamer fishing and tight line nymphing, all with the same rod. So I'm taking my little boat back here behind me, but I'm going to fish all on foot, and I'm going to use this rod to do all those different strategies, and I will just share a few tips on each one, but I want to show you how I rig each one. But the idea is that you could take, an ultralight rod like this that's really designed for crossover fishing between tight line nymphing and all of the other aforementioned strategies, and I can do it all with one rod and actually one reel the way I'm going to rig it up. So I've got a Hardy Averon Reel on here on the Hardly Ultralite number 499. So we're going to go through all those different techniques, hope to catch a couple fish, but I want to share with you what I do when I'm fishing just like you. I don't have a drift boat, I'm not guiding, I'm just out here on some public water trying to fish for a few hours and find some success. So first off, we're going to go dry fly fishing. I'm going to rig this up with a 7.5 foot 3X leader and a hopper fly, and I'm going to test it. I am testing it with the Rio Gold weight forward 4-weight line. I'm not overlining this. I'm not throwing a heavy taper. This really is a nice dry fly taper that I'm going to test on here. So just straight 7.5 foot 3X leader and a hopper. I'm gonna rig up, jump in the boat, go downstream, and test this rod for some dry fly fishing. So I'm all rigged up. I'm just gonna float downstream, and I'm gonna find, I think I'm gonna go down to a little back channel. This river is giant. I'm actually in a back channel right now. And I'm just gonna do some upstream dry fly fishing. My initial impressions on the rod are excellent. Really nice casting rod. And later in the video, I'll compare it to a couple of others, but more on just fishing strategy. I generally will start with dry fly fishing if there's any chance of dries. It rigs up really quick. All I gotta do is get a leader on there, start with a nice fresh tapered leader, tie my fly on, and I'm fishing. No complex rigs. I can shake out the nervous jitters. I don't wanna, there's nothing worse than rigging up like a technical nymphing rig and then tangling up about, 4 casts into your session or snagging bottom. So I like to start with dry flies. And it's kind of the heart and soul of the sport anyways. So I want to have a rod, if I'm taking one, to do everything that will actually throw some good loops and allow me a technical or strategic advantage. So many of the Euro nymphing rods, they're just so well built for just that touch and go nymphing that they don't dry fly cast very well. If you watch back and you followed the channel, I've never really advocated one as a decent dry fly crossover rod. So the Hardy LL in the ultralight is I've cast it in the lawn, and that's part of what intrigued me is it does cast a dry fly pretty well. So anyway, start with dry flies. I'm gonna pull into a back channel down here, throw the head cam on, and I'm gonna go to town, try to get one on a dry. Okay, I'm gonna pull in right here. There's a log jam I'm gonna have to climb over, but I'm gonna secure my boat right up here along the shoreline. Put my feet down. I'm just gonna drag my boat up on this island, and then I'm gonna hike over the log jam back into there. There was a grab. That was great. Okay, had a little strike right there, way back in that hole. Way back in there. Let's try this area. Move that bug a little bit, tease him out from under the log maybe. Let's try this side. Yeah, pretty good casting rod. You definitely lose a little control and accuracy with the longer length. But I gotta say, for a rod that's pushing 10 feet, it actually throws pretty good. Little hook cast, so when I present into this spot right here, I'm gonna have a real hard stop of the rod and try to kick my fly in there, but keep my fly line out of play. So there we go, like that nice hook to the left. Nobody home. All right, I'm gonna keep hiking up. So one thing I love about getting in these channels is I can just straight upstream dry fly. I'm just standing out here mid-river, and I don't have to worry about fighting roll casts against the brush or anything like that. But not very often. Usually everything is going to be in these seam lines closer to the shore. So I'm just gonna kind of keep working up. I'm covering water pretty fast. This is called the roll cast recovery. Let me demonstrate that. So for an upstream dry fly angler, fly's floating back to me, I'm stripping in my line. There's a certain distance I get to, kind of a threshold, where I don't want to strip anymore. I roll cast into the air and then recover it. So fly's floating back to me, back to me, back to me. I stop stripping. I just raise rod to maintain control. That raising, I take right into a roll cast and then fire back up again. Now this is pretty fishy, right? Oh, there's a fish. Got him. Oh, God, he just slacklined me. That fish followed the fly downstream, was coming back at me really fast. There's another one. Missed him. These fish are hard to hook. They've had a whole summer's education being fished to with these big dry flies. Maybe I should have chose something smaller. Good, so just keep kind of working right along those willows. There'll be more. There was a little guy right when I was picking up. But yeah, I've got no complaints about how the rod handles naturally. An 8.5 footer for this type of fishing would probably be better. It would be a little snappier and more accurate. But you can do all this dry fly fishing with this 9-foot 9-incher. Okay, I saw a fish rise. See if I can get a hook in this one. I'm gonna finish the cast with my rod low. That way I've got the best hook setting leverage I can get. Oh, come on, eat that. Okay, roll cast to recover into the air. Let's fire up another one, rod low on an upstream dry fly cast. Okay, smooth fishing. I just need a little help from the trout here. Solid cast. Good drift. So again, I'm gonna actually hook this fly around the corner here. You probably won't be able to see it land. Yeah, so I hooked it around the bend. It's gonna come out from under the grass right there. And the way I do that hook is I get just a tiny bit sidearm and make a real firm stop. And I just threw a curveball around that grass point. It's called a positive hook or an overpowered curve. Nobody home. Let's try the riptide in the middle this time. See if there's any hanging out mid-river. Nada. Line over there. Run it right under that tree. And if I really get after it, there's lots of tricks with how to set up a roll cast, but what I was doing there was I was getting enough slack line near myself to make a good D-loop. So what I do is I just snap it right there, gets the line close, so I can actually have a D-loop and throw a long cast right against that grassy bank. There you go, right against the log. That was great. I almost overlooked that water. I got distracted picking that apart. Nice little 12-incher. Yeah, we'll take it. Right on, rainbow. Sweet. Okay, so I got up on top of this big log jam as I waded up, and it's pretty deep. It's probably chest deep down there. I could make it, but I'm gonna just call that good for dry fly fishing. I did like the way the rod handled and casted. I think I mentioned this maybe in one of the clips. An 8.5 or a 9-foot rod would certainly be more accurate and a little snappier, but there is some advantages to the 9.9 or a longer rod. It can roll cast extremely well. It sets the hook at distance extremely well. I missed about 6 fish they weren't super enthusiastic. It's pretty warm today. It's middle of the day. They were a little nervous. A way to combat that would be to run smaller flies that ride a little bit lower. I was using a really big bushy Emma stonefly, and I love the pattern because it skates good and it's easy to see, but I was missing a lot of fish and then finally got one. But what I did is I actually snipped the hackle off the bottom and trimmed down the wing a little bit to get it to ride a little bit lower, just with my scissor clamps, which are swung around the back of my neck right now. So yeah, solid dry fly fishing, but like a lot of other anglers, I'm not getting quite as many fish hooked up as I'd like to, so next I'm gonna go to a dry fly with a dropper. It's a really quick, easy change. I'm gonna move to another spot and I will demonstrate that next. I wanna try to pick up a couple of more fish. So my transition is always try dry flies. It's really fast and efficient to set up, and then I'll go to a hopper dropper or dry dropper system next, and it literally takes me about a minute or two to make that change. And all I have to do is replace whatever dry fly I was fishing with something that's buoyant enough to carry a nymph, and I default almost exclusively to a chubby Chernobyl. That white wing is for your viewing pleasure. It's nice and buoyant, and the dubbed belly of that fly kind of anchors the dry fly in, so that when I mend and I try to make adjustments for fishing my nymph, and the nymph, it was said best as far as size matching by Jason, who directs our university. He basically said you're looking for something either 4 numbers or 2 sizes smaller to provide good balance. So if I've got a size 8 chubby Chernobyl, a size 12 nymph would be appropriate. I have a size 10 chubby Chernobyl, and so I've got a size 14 nymph. And that provides good balance. The dry fly is not going to be too buoyant, and the nymph's not going to be too heavy. That's just a good balance. So I've got my dry dropper. It was really quick to re-rig. Now I can check out just under the surface. I'm gonna park my boat here, and I'm actually gonna dry wade, meaning I'm gonna stay up on the bank and I'm gonna fish some white caps right down here with the hopper dropper. I'm gonna walk downstream and get somewhat below and across from the fish, because the fish are all looking upstream. And I didn't mention it before, but my dropper is about 24 to 30 inches, somewhere right in there. There's no hatch happening or anything right now. So I'm really just kind of nymphing with my dry fly setup. And I really like a long rod for this kind of fishing, because I'm gonna stand way back off the bank, and I'm gonna high stick over the edge of the bank out into the riffle here. So it's gonna be a lot of just kind of little roll casting, kind of a hopper, dropper, plopper type move. A lot of high sticking. So again, I'm just gonna take that nice long rod, and the rod tip is fortunately light enough that I can actually get that cast to go. If the rod is too powerful, it just doesn't like to do these little fishy plops. So yeah, I'm just gonna stay back and dry wade here. And what I did there is I just reset it. It was gonna drift too close to the bank, so I flipped it down there. Now I'm gonna fish right out into the edge of the heavy water. I've now stepped up just a little closer to the bank. There was a grab right there, but I gotta be careful with my hook set because I got that tree behind me. So I really wanna make sure that it's a good hook set worth setting on, or my fly will wind up in the tree. You can also do a little jab set downstream as well, is another way to do it. So let's see if I can get another strike in there. And I'm trying to stay kind of in the shadow. There's a pine tree making a shadow right here. And I'm gonna set it back down. I didn't like where that went, so I just threw my fly back down there so I can take it and load it using the water, right off the water, and I'm right into a high stick type drift. There we go, good. All right, now I'm on the dry dropper. On the dry dropper, and I'm back here dry wading, so I'm gonna grab my net and I'm gonna slip down right into the edge of the stream here and just slide him back. That's definitely a fish I would not have gotten on the dry fly, and he's already unhooked. That's how we like it. It's oh, he swam down to the bottom of the net. That's how we like it during the midsummer. We're gonna let those fish go fast. So, all right, so I got a trout on a dry dropper. First spot I stopped. I'm just gonna throw that over here. And I could probably continue fishing that shallow water with a dry dropper, but I just wanna test and share kind of my strategies if the fishing wasn't productive, what I would move to next. I could certainly change droppers and things, but I'm gonna go ahead and go to a light line indicator rig. And if you follow this channel, you'll know that I'm a huge fan of yarn. I think for that angler that fishes a lot, and I'm not talking about the angler floating in a guide's boat, that's a totally different thing, but somebody who's out there wading, who is fishing the same water for a longer period of time, they really need better tactics to extract trout out of those spots. You know, the old thingamabobber with a giant pat stone and a lightning bug or perdigon of sorts, that has a lot of presence. You're gonna tell a lot of fish that you're there right off the bat. And I think that these more technical, more delicate rigs for the wade fisherman that's really getting after it are hugely advantageous. And what I'm doing here is I'm taking at the very end of my 7.5 foot 3X leader, I'm just gonna tie on a tippet ring right there. And then I'm gonna take out of my dispenser here, I'm just gonna take a strand of New Zealand wool or yarn. And I'm just gonna cut a strand, maybe 1.5 inches long. I'm not super picky because I can always shorten it in just a moment, but it'll have plenty of buoyancy. There are different ways to rig this up. If you like or fancy the idea of moving your indicator up and down the line, you could do it different. But I just take and I'm often customizing my yarn size throughout the day depending on what I'm fishing. And so I just take and I just did an overhand knot, and I'm just gonna tie that piece of yarn right in there. So that's it. So then I will take and that's gonna be my strike indicator for the next leg of the mission. And I've got a comb here somewhere. There it is. People laugh about the comb, but once you've used this damn thing, you will always use it. So then I just comb it out and I get all those fibers to flare out. So there's tons of surface area on there, and I can style that up and trim it and change it here in a moment. But generally what I do is I'll comb that guy out, try to even some of it up because the yarn isn't perfect, and set that comb there for just a moment, because when I put floating in it, I'll comb it again. So then I'll square it up so that it's nice and tidy. But that thing is like a feather. It'll float and wander, and it'll track at a much closer rate to my flies. Now this isn't gonna be a super deep nymph rig. I'm a huge fan of starting with one nymph, so that's what I'm gonna do. And for some reason, the nymph with the tippet ring, the way I've set it up here, just fishes better than a hopper dropper a lot of the time. So what I'm gonna do is I'm keeping this simple today, but there is an option. I've done other videos where I can put that tippet ring on a loop so that it hinges and falls faster. I'm just gonna tie my new tippet, which is gonna be 4X fluorocarbon, and I'm just gonna tie a clinch knot to the tippet ring. Now that tippet ring is giving me like a junction point there to where if I were to break off my tippet, snag, tangle, whatever, I now have a really easy junction point where I don't have to do a splice knot. So I'm gonna fish about 4 feet deep, and I'm gonna fish a little heavier nymph to get down under some of those fast surface currents. It's real bright and sunny today, but this is my next step in trying to figure out what's gonna be effective for me, as I will generally start with that light yarn indicator rig, and I'll set my indicator or my nymph depth, the length of my tippet being like 4 feet. I'm gonna average about 4 feet of water. I want my nymph just slightly off the bottom, just hovering. I don't wanna be hitting bottom a lot. That's gonna create a lot of false hook sets. I could wind up with that many false hook sets. I could throw it in the alder trees behind me. Lots of bad things could happen. I'm also gonna disturb and scare fish with too many hook sets. So I'd like to just let that fly kind of levitate through that water column as long as I'm in the bottom half where that water is very slow. That concept is called laminar flow. The water along the bottom is slow, the water along the top is fast. With the yarn and a fairly heavy or dense nymph, my yarn will actually float slower to match the speed of the nymph. The nymph is the boss, so I need my yarn or my indicator, whatever it happens to be, to track really well. Big indicators like the Oros and thingamabobbers, there are certainly places for those, but for the wade fisherman that's really going to be surgically picking apart a piece of water, I don't think anything beats yarn. That's why it's the exclusive or the official indicator of New Zealand. So I'm gonna pick out, you know, some type of tungsten jig head nymph, probably with like a 3.8 or 3.4 millimeter bead. I'll start with one nymph, but then I could certainly run a stonefly nymph and a combo. But smaller flies, I want to fish the smallest fly that's going to get down and be effective for me, so that I can fish to those trout again and again and again without making too much of a presence in the pool. It's a lot funner to handle. Now this leader winds up being about 11 feet long, maybe even 12 feet. So a longer rod is really, really essential for this type of fishing. I'm gonna be doing a lot of high sticking. I'll have the head cam on, and you'll see that my drifts aren't gonna be real long drifts, but they're gonna be methodical with a lot of high sticking to really try to get that nymph to hang vertically under the indicator and utilize all of its drop length. I really want my indicator doing some of this undulation on the surface currents, making that nymph really ride and give the ride mid-column, not tapping on the bottom a lot, and really create the illusion that that nymph has some neutral buoyancy, is just kind of fluttering along in this fluid environment. So we'll just run one nymph. We'll run down, and I'll plop them around with this this new rod, and it's built for it, so I assume it's going to work really well. And I do appreciate the light tip of this rod, so that I can set the hook really quick on very light line as well. And the fish tend to stay on with smaller hooks when you have real light rods. If you try to do the equivalent setup with a 9-foot 6-weight, you're going to miss more fish. You're probably going to miss a few more fish with a real fast action 5. But those softer tips, those small hooks, do grab the trout a little bit better with the hook sets on that. Okay, here we go. So I'm targeting deeper water now, because I do have my nymph set up deeper. And God, that is so easy to fish. Okay, so I'm just gonna I've got this alder tree behind me, so I'm just gonna plop a little roll. There he is, got him. Decent fish, second cast. Decent. Oh, and he came unhooked just as I was starting my camera. We'll go live. Hooked one on the second cast. We're just gonna plop up. Just getting a little deeper seemed to make all the difference in the world with that heavy, heavy nymph that sinks real fast. And a little bit more drop line. See if we can duplicate that hook up here. So nice long leader, allows me to high stick real clean without putting tension on it. Rod's almost 10 feet long, so that helps. Okay. Again, now what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna dump mend it. I'm gonna flick that yarn back up, and that's really gonna make it drop at a very strategic point in the drift. There's a bite, missed him. Okay, so right here, there's a drop. So I'm gonna roll that indicator back. It's called an anchor mend. That one moved through too fast. I could just tell. I was a little too far out. So let me go back in a little closer. And right there, I'm gonna flip that indicator back. That nymph is gonna fall deep right there. I'm gonna drop it off the ledge. And I'm gonna vary where I'm dropping that thing now. That's the beauty about yarn, is you can flip that thing back and drop that nymph right where you want it. Bring it right in on their head. Okay, so I showed you how I set up my indicator, and that would be like my natural progression in searching for a productive and satisfying method. So I ran that yarn indicator. I got a fish hooked up on like the second cast, and it was new water. I hadn't run my dry dropper over that water. I was down a little further, and was really surprised because I fished it over again and got like one more grab, and that was it. So it didn't really prove itself to be more productive. I think the fish are in pretty shallow water. If I were fishing, like just fishing today and not like demonstrating techniques and overview or reviewing this rod, I'd probably just stick with a hopper dropper. stick to that shallow riffle water and just enjoy myself, and maybe I'd even get a few on the dry fly. Like that, to me, so far would make sense. One quick way, I didn't like outline it at the time, but one quick way to like go deeper. So I set my original rig up with that Perdigon at 4 feet deep. And I was like, you know, maybe if I got just a little deeper, I could really get on that ledge and get that bug moving a little slower through that deeper section. And slower is the key. I really just, the fish are generally pretty happy to float up. That's a really, you know, moving up 12 or 18 inches is pretty easy for them to do it. It has more to do with slowing that nymph down to the appropriate water speed that they are laying in. So deeper often just moves the fly slower. But what you can do is, I don't move my indicator. I generally like my indicator out at the end of a nice long taper so that I can mend and be articulate. And high sticking works better with long leaders because fly line will sag or bow because it has weight to it. Whereas leader material will wind up being nice and straight from your rod tip down to the indicator. It doesn't have as much weight. That's called gravitational sag. And I like long leaders, and I don't mess with my indicator. I generally put my indicator where it's going to be most strategic for my mending and my high sticking, and then I'll vary my depth based on, I'm going to break off or tangle a couple times throughout the day or change flies, and then I can either shorten or lengthen my tippet really easy. It's not a big deal to do that. But a really quick way to run deeper is I can just add a second fly. It's legal to run 2 flies here at this time, so I can run a second fly, and I just added 18 inches to my setup, and I ended up changing and running a small pat stone and a little smaller nymph. But what that does, it added 18 inches of depth really quickly and efficiently, and it also gave me 2 flies so that I could run 2 flies. The 2 flies add more weight, they add more depth, and it altered my presentation. Unfortunately, I had no success. I thought that I would have a lot of success doing that. But 2 flies, people, is not always the answer. It looks a lot more suspicious cruising through there than 1 fly. I think single fly fishing is, with nymphs, is just highly underrated. I'm gonna go down to them and do 1 more stop. I know this rod will throw a streamer on like a technical mono rig extremely well. I can just tell by the rod's attitude. For that type of fishing, love the 9.9 just for high sticking. It's got a really fast rate of recovery. So when I make that shot and come into a high stick, that rod snaps back to straight really quickly, which I like for tuck casts and those hook casts I was doing with the dry fly. So yeah, the rod's great. I mean, I didn't expect otherwise. The thing costs like 900 bucks, so it better be pretty damn good. But I'm actually really impressed. I'd heard so many good things about it, and it's living up to the expectations. And I'm already kind of making a spot in my quiver for it because, again, I've been trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. I've been doing a lot of this indicator fishing and this jig streamer fishing, and even attempting to throw a dry fly with some rods that are just built really specifically and built really well for really light technical nymphing. So I think this rod is a really great one rod to rule the day and go through all these different scenarios. So I'm gonna skip past the streamer fishing with mono because I really wanna see, this will be the shortest rod that I've used as kind of a dedicated tight line nymphing rod. And I just wanna run a traditional, you know, kind of a Euro nymphing setup on it and see how that does as far as performance. So I'll stop one more time, show you how I set my leader up, and then I want to test it with that rig. Okay, I'm going to pull into my next spot down here, and I've got a couple of Perdigon nymphs on there. I really want to test this rod, and this is the setup I would go to after I've tried dry flies and dry droppers typically, but I'm just going to try to get into a little spot along the bank here and fish out to some rocks. So I'm just probably going to stand in the boat. The boat has a hole in the bottom for my feet. So I'm just going to navigate my way in here and find a good place to stand. Always kind of tricky. I just got to eddy in here. Just like so. Put my feet on solid ground. Seemingly solid ground, and then I'm not as big a fan of this boat as I am a Watermaster. This boat is a little bigger and a little taller. I don't like the oars as much because the oars get up in my way here. So I'm going to take this oar. Yeah, the Watermaster boat for the style I fish is my preferred boat. So I'll just set that oar there. And what I'm looking for here is I'm just looking for hidden slow spots within the rocks. And with my leader, I think I'll just kind of talk you through what I did. I left that 7.5 foot 3X leader on, that tapered leader here. And at the end of it, I added 10 feet of 8-pound Maxima chameleon. And then I knotted in a piece of 1X cider material. And I left a little tag on my knot right there so that I can see where my cider starts real distinctly. And then I put in a tippet ring and left a tag here. 5 feet of 4X fluorocarbon down to a perdigon, and then a little tag on 6X out to another little Frenchie nymph. And I was able to do all of that just while I was floating. It really wasn't that big of a deal to re-rig. Now, I think if you're learning to tightline nymph, a full mono rig like this is definitely not the way to go. I recommend like a Rio Phipps line. There's fish, good fish. First cast. I recommend a Rio Phipps line if you're just learning. My net is here somewhere. God, he felt really solid when he bit. Okay, that's definitely the fastest hookup I've gotten on all the setups here. So let me get him unhooked. He should already be unhooked. He is. Those hooks are so barbless. That's great. So hopefully I didn't mess up my flies too much. And get my flies back out of the net here. That's what I like. I like those fish to come off really quick. So I'm standing in the boat, but the same would be true with the brush against the bank. Getting started with like a mono rig like this, I do the same thing every time. I just take and kind of sidearm cast my nymph downstream, and then I'll plop it up, and that rod gets up really high really quick, and I try not to let my cider hit the water on these short casts. So I'm just going to plop again and try to get it just right in the slow spot right there, really slowing that nymph down. There was a bite. Really awkward fishing this deep of water in the boat right here. So I'm going to fire it down. This is the only place I've seen this rod to have a disadvantage yet is I would like a 10.5 or 11 footer if I were doing this fishing exclusively. But it's doing fine. I can't really feel the bottom intimately like I could with like my Contact 2 weight. I can't feel every tap, but I felt that fish real well. Okay, I'm going to drill this one in and get a little deeper. I'm going to drop in on that. My leader got stuck in my eyelet right there. I should have ran more like 20 feet of that 8-pound Maxima. Okay, so moving my feet just a little bit, and I'm just trying to find those hidden areas of slow water in there. This boat is a royal pain in the neck. Look at that, hung around the friggin' oarlock. I should have beached it. I should have tied it up to those. There we go. Much better fish. There we go. Oh, are you kidding me? No, he didn't break off. God, that was a tank. Holy crap. Let me try that again. That was some juice right there. Holy smokes, man. There's a fish. There we go. Decent fish. So he ate the streamer. I switched up to a jig streamer just to see how this would cast a streamer, and this rod likes more weight. It's actually a pretty decent fish. He's not fighting quite as much as some of the others that were even a little smaller. Nice fish though, look at that rod bend. So I've got my line, my fingers over that line right there. That's providing just a little more drag. And then if that fish takes off, I can drop that line as I drop the rod. Nice, ate that jig streamer. Hopefully he just comes unhooked by himself. I'm trying to keep him wet. Yep, he's unhooked, he just goes back in. Nice. So, yeah, I switched up because I wanted to run that jig streamer. I'll show you that. I run it with a loop knot. One of my absolute favorite ways to fish. Let me give you a few notes on just the techniques I did today as we float out here. All right, just some concluding thoughts on the day. The rod's great. It is a nice light line, multiple tactic rod. I mean, Dries, dry droppers, indicators, whatever. I think that the tip on this rod being relatively light is going to be very good with those small technical flies. So you get down to 16s, 18s, even 20s. The tip's going to do a really good job for you. So I think this rod really is geared towards the angler that wants to utilize multiple strategies to kind of figure things out, and they don't want to own as many fly rods as I do. For crying out loud, nobody needs to have, you know, I don't even know how many rods I've got, but having a couple of rods that will do a lot of different things, I think this rod is a great investment for somebody who's fishing a lot that might leave the rig in the morning and say, hey, I'm gonna dry fly, I'm gonna dry dropper, I'm gonna indicator, I'm gonna tight line nymph a little bit, all that stuff. It's a fabulous rod for that. Like I wouldn't tell you otherwise. If you're not gonna be into the tight line nymphing, and you're just gonna do the indicators, dry droppers, and that kind of stuff, there's probably some more powerful rods that might lend themselves better to that streamer, you know, with a sink tip type crossover. I don't think this rod would really like a sink tip and a streamer all that much, so it wouldn't be for you. But if you're gonna dabble with the tight line fishing, which was by far, like not even remotely close, the most effective today. I mean, like I hooked 6 fish in about 10 minutes or less right there. And that 10 minutes included a major fly change because I tangled the hell out of 2 nymphs. And so I said, hey, I'm gonna throw that streamer on there. I fished the streamer for about 2 minutes and got a really nice rainbow in there on that jig streamer. So the rod handles the jig streamer and stuff really well. Is it the best rod for tight line nymphing? Absolutely not. I mean, if you want something the equivalent price point, purpose built for, you know, Czech style Euro nymphing, go with that TNT Contact 2 or say GSN 2 would be another great alternative, but that TNT is kind of that's the one I have the most time on, so I can endorse it. But yeah, super good choice. Hopefully, you know, just setting up all these different techniques and showing you this stuff is helpful today, regardless of whether you're shopping or not. My goal is to help you have a great experience on the water and utilize all those techniques. Started the day with Dries, got one on a dry, about 6 strikes, went to a dry dropper, got one right away, went to the indicator just to continue working through my progression, and then finally wound up at tight line nymphing, and that was like, I mean, not even close. I mean, so much more effective. It's not even funny. So anyway, that's my wrap on the day of fishing. All these products, most of the flies and stuff I used today are going to be online at Red's. Just a note regarding this boat. The Outcast Clearwater is a great boat for somebody who's going to float downstream and drag it onto the shore and then wade fish, or if you're bigger. If you're 250, 300 pounds, this boat's going to serve you a little bit better than like a Watermaster, an Outcast Scout. The Clearwater is the best frameless boat for big dudes. For the way I fish, standing in deep water in the boat, the oars just sit up too high and the pontoons are too high for me. So just kind of a sidebar about my my boat situation here today. I normally would take Old Blue, the Kodiak Watermaster, but it was rented out by a customer, so I did not have access to my my regular old ancient blue Watermaster today. So I better do some rowing. I'm about to hang my rod tip in a tree here. So anyway, thanks for watching. Appreciate you. Shop at Red's.